Alrighty. According to all the things, we are live. Hopefully you can hear me and you can hear the music quietly in the background. If you can't, please let me know. If you can't hear me or if you can't hear the music, just pop me a message in the chat. It is my first live stream of 2025. I haven't streamed in a while. I haven't had much time to stream. I kind of ran out of ideas to stream. But this year has certainly given me some new focus in a lot of ways. It's also given me some new ideas. And the birth, or the boom, if you will, say the birth, the boom of AI coding tools has certainly given me a lot to experiment with. And so that's what I'll be focusing on for future live streams. I have a whole bunch of ideas. I have a whole bunch of things that I've tried that I'm going to maybe try and replicate or something along those lines. I just want to reiterate that if you are joining the stream, let me know if you can hear me clearly enough, if you can hear the background music. If the background music is not overpowering my voice on the mic, I'm still playing with my audio settings a bit. So let me know if everything's clear and if you can hear me fine, and if you can hear the music, then if I'm loud enough over the music. If the music's too loud, let me know and I can drop that audio source a little bit. But if it's all fine, then we're good to go. Otherwise, say hi. Love to know where everybody is joining me from. But let's get stuck in. So, as I mentioned, I have been toying with some AI coding tools. I've used Copilot for a number of years, more for generating code snippets and code examples for my writing. Okay, there we go. AJ says the music is a bit loud, so let's drop the music down a bit. I'm going to drop it down by another 0.5 decibels. Let me know if that's better. If it isn't, we can just keep tweaking it. Maybe we just spend a few minutes tweaking the audio. So let me know, AJ, how the music's going. If it's too loud, if it's too soft. Okay, AJ says that's better. So we'll leave it at that for now. If it gets a bit too much, you can just let me know and I'll drop it down again. Anyway, as I was saying, I've been using Copilot for a number of years now, mostly just to generate code snippets, code examples for tutorials that I've been working on, for lessons that I've been working on. And I've also used it for some personal projects. So I actually don't know if I've shared this publicly before, but some time ago I wrote a little times table game for my then grade 4 son. He's now 13, so that's how old this is. 4, 5, 6, 7. So 3-4 years ago. It was just a very simple little in fact, he was in grade 3, I think. It was a little randomized timetable game, and most of the JavaScript for this was written using Copilot. I have no idea how good it is, but it works. And then I built a game a while back. The focus of the game was more to actually learn about the interactivity API in WordPress, but I needed help with some of the JavaScript for this game itself. And so let's just pop off a game here. And so a lot of the code that manages the movements of the game, the main W and the different content management system icons, that was all sort of primarily written by Copilot with some input by me. So I have a fair amount of experience with using Copilot. I've never tested it. I've never tested it in sort of production environments. It's all just been experiments that I've been fiddling with, mostly for some JavaScript help, because my JavaScript knowledge is not as good as my PHP knowledge. And that's kind of it. And then somebody at the company that I work for shared a video of their process of using Cursor. And Cursor is this code editor, the AI code editor, if you will. It uses Visual Code Studio under the hood, and then it connects to various different models. I think they host their own LLMs. I'm not 100% sure, but you can select from the OpenAI models. You can select from Claude. They recently added DeepSeek. And so I watched this video and I did some reading online, and I actually came across somebody who I think works at Intel at the moment, and they kind of explained how they use Cursor. And I was kind of fiddling around with an idea of how I could do this, and I came up with the idea of building a very simple WordPress debugging app. Essentially, it just reads your debug log, and it does a few other things. And I actually have it installed on my Mac at the moment. And I built this entire app using Cursor and prompts, and wrote very little code myself. And I spent about 4 hours building this thing out, and it works. Again, I have no idea how good the code is. I haven't really dived into that. So if you use React and you're good at React and you want to come and look through the code and submit pull requests to improve the code, feel free. I'd love to know how badly wrong the AI tool got it. But I was able to get a working app up and running in approximately 5 hours. Now, I don't know how long it takes somebody who understands Electron to be able to build an app like this, of this sort of feature set. But for me, that was pretty impressive. 5 hours of just sitting in front of Cursor, sending it prompts, working with it. And so my goal today is to kind of start building some things like this. There was another video that my colleague Nick published. It's on the WordPress.com YouTube channel, where he talks about his process, and my process is very similar to what he has. He shared that with me. And it's kind of the best way to use these tools. And so I'm going to try and share some of this knowledge about how to use these tools. I'm going to see how good the tools are. I definitely have had some successes and some failures. If you look through the commit history of this project, you'll see there's definitely some things that were suggested by the AI tools and then reverted. But it certainly was an interesting learning experience. And so that's what I'm hoping to try and bring through in these live streams. So I do have a bunch of ideas. The tools that I'm going to be using, primarily Cursor, as I mentioned. If you've never used Cursor before, it's at cursor.com. I'll share these in the chat if I can copy paste into the chat. There we go. So Cursor is the one that I'll be using. I found Copilot to be handy to kind of switch to if I was struggling with something in Cursor. And I'll talk in future live streams about how Copilot actually became more useful in the GitHub environment when I was setting up my GitHub Actions. I was able to use, so GitHub has a Copilot chat app that exists inside the GitHub Actions and will actually help you troubleshoot your GitHub Actions. So that was an interesting experience. So hopefully we'll be diving into that in future live streams. And then I'll also be using something called Perplexity. So because I work at Automatic, we have a Perplexity account. There's a partnership between Perplexity and Automatic. So it's kind of like ChatGPT, if you will. You'll see the interface is very similar. But because I see now that I'm not logged into this account, so I'm going to just move this off screen and log into my account quickly. So let's just do this over here. But it kind of, the reason I'm using it is because I have access to a pro account at work, so it just makes my life a lot easier. But it's sort of very similar to a ChatGPT type environment. So when I hit questions or problems or issues that I can't get figured out in the Cursor environment, then I might switch to Perplexity. So I just have it handy. So let me copy that link out as well. And you can go and check out. Oh, I've actually pasted it in the chat already. You can go and check that out. And the other thing that I haven't written down here is I'm going to try and not write any code at all. For the applications or the plugins or the software that I know, I'm going to try and keep an eye on the code that it's writing and see if I would suggest any changes. But I'm going to do my best not to write any code at all. The only thing that I might do manually myself is running some command lines, so pushing to Git repositories and that kind of thing. Not that the Cursor tool can't do that, and I'm hoping to experiment with that a little bit as well. But when I was building my first apps, I was just writing those terminal commands myself because it was just easier for me. The idea that we're going to be starting with today, so my friend Remkus de Vries, if you don't know Remkus, he is a member of the WordPress community who lives in the Netherlands. Go check him out. He's on Blue Sky, he's on Twitter. He runs his own company. He has his own podcast. But he asked, does anyone have a favorite way to bulk export a particular custom post type to a markdown file? And I thought that was an interesting one to start with because Number one, it's a set of languages that I'm comfortable with. It's a framework, if you will, or a CMS or whatever product that I'm comfortable with. But also it's using custom post type content. So that could be using the block editor, using the classic editor. So it needs to kind of deal with those two scenarios. It's going to need to pass possibly block markup in the post editors, stored as in the post type data content field. I had to think about that for a second. So it's going to throw out some curveballs, and so we might have to kind of dive into that. So that's going to be my first project. Future projects, I'm hoping to do something like maybe rebuild the WP debug app and sort of see what comes out of that. I have some ideas around building something in Python because I've always wanted to learn how to build things in Python. So I have some ideas around that. So just lots of ideas of things that I want to build, and going to use Cursor to do it. I'm also planning on publishing all of this code on GitHub so that anybody can check it out. And if you have comments about the code quality, or if you want to tell me it's terrible, please feel free in the GitHub repositories that I create, because I want to understand if I'm building in a language that I don't understand, but Cursor is generating stuff for me. I want to know what it gets wrong so that I can learn from the process as well. So if you're joining this in a future stream, or you're watching this on YouTube and you know better than what Cursor's outputting, please do let me know in any of the repositories. All right, I'm going to stop waffling now and get stuck in. So this is our basic idea. So build a conversion of custom post type content to Markdown. The one thing that Remke said, that it should be possible to configure a year, month, date as a prefix to the Markdown files. He also wants a bulk Markdown. I forgot to add this in here. So he wants like a bulk export process. So maybe some kind of screen somewhere that you click on, and there's a drop down, you select a custom post type, it then generates all the markdowns, sticks just off the top of my head, sticks them in somewhere in the uploads directory, generates a zip file for you, and then presents you a link to download the zip file or something like that. So bulk export and download. And then what can't be converted should be stripped back to just text. So I'm going to try and see how far the Cursor tool can go before I start giving it samples of what the content might look like. I'm obviously going to have to create some samples of content. I'll start with block markup first, just because that's easy. I don't have to install a plugin for it. And we'll see how far we get today. If we get to a point where that's all working and we can install Classic Editor and fiddle with some Classic Editor stuff. I mean, Classic Editor is just HTML, so it should just work. Let's see. So this is our basic idea. So this is kind of the thing that I started with when I built the debug app. So I opened up Cursor. This is what the Cursor window looks like. I like to have the terminal open. I have it open on my WordPress testbed, which is running through Studio. So here it is over here. I haven't even opened the admin for this yet, so I'll just pop it open in a browser. So there it is there. So it's just a default WordPress install. I haven't done anything else. I haven't installed anything else. And it's asking for custom post types. So I'm going to have to do something to create a custom post type, and then create a custom post type. But I'm going to start with just posts, because it's quick and easy for me to generate some posts very quickly. I'm going to use the WordPress plugin, just because it's the one that I know. Some other folks in a community Slack that I was in the other day suggested some other plugins. I just like WordPress. It's developed by a friend as well. It's somebody I know. So I wouldn't say it's a friend, but it's somebody I know through developer communities. So that's another reason why I like to install and use his plugin. So I'm trying to install WordPress and just generate 9 posts. So we have some posts to work with. And then I'll activate that. And then let's go generate some posts. So if we go to posts, I'm just going to do, there's one default one, so I'll create 9 to start off with. When they were generated doesn't bother me. We'll leave the comment as is. I am going to take out any images. We'll take out the more tag as well. We'll take out the image tag. So I'm just going to leave all of that, and let's see what Markdown can do with that. I'm not going to worry about tags and categories. Actually, I can just do that. And I'll just let that generate a bunch of posts. Okay, there we go. So there's a bunch of posts generated. So now I just have a bunch of random posts. So we're going to work just with these posts for now, and take it from there. All right. So now I'm going to grab, and this is kind of the process that I've been following, so I want to share this process with you. So what I've been doing is I take the basic requirements, and I start by saying to the composer. So Cursor has this chat option and the composer option, and I found the composer option to be the more sort of beneficial option to use. I don't know what the difference is between the two. I think chat is more like a ChatGPT, type system. Composer is more sort of better for generating code and that kind of thing. I haven't dived into the differences, so if you want to dive into that, you're more than welcome to. But I'm going to start by saying I want to build a WordPress plugin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this sort of take up half the screen so we can see what it gives us. I'm going to build a WordPress plugin. Please don't write any code. And I say please like I'm talking to a human. I could just say don't write any code, but I'm probably too polite. Don't write any code yet. First, let's define requirements. And that's how I'm going to start. So what it then does is it sort of thinks about what it's going to ask me, and then it starts asking me some questions. And it's a whole bunch of things. What is the main goal of your plugin? What problem will it solve for WordPress users? What specific functionality would you like to include? Existing plugins that can probably use code. Who will use this plugin? That kind of thing. So now I start answering the question. So I say the main goal of the plugin is to allow users, let's say administrators, let's say users, to download copies of their posts or custom post types in Markdown format. Okay, so that's the main goal. Problem I'm not going to worry about. What specific function would you like to include? Specific functionality should include the option to select from a list of post types and generate the markdown files zipped somewhere in the WordPress uploads directory. Okay. I'm not going to answer the question about existing plugins. Who will use this plugin? So now we're starting to get a bit more. Hey, Fluff. Just saw you there. So now we're starting to get a bit more specific about, what this thing should do. So let's say target users would be WordPress site administrators. So hopefully that'll include something around permissions with limited technical expertise. So we're going to say that they don't know how, they don't have any development experience. I'm not going to answer the question about options. Will it need to create custom posts? I'm not going to answer that. Does it need to create features? No. Does it need to store data? I'm not going to answer that. Will it need to interact with APIs? No. Specific performance? I'm not going to worry about that now. I'm only going to answer those questions, and I'm going to see what it does. Okay, so now it started generating some plugin structure for me, and this is where it gets interesting because I have found this a lot with Composer. It does tend to sometimes overcompensate in a way. I found this compared to Copilot. I found Cursor to kind of overcompensate, sometimes in a good way, but sometimes in an annoying way. Copilot tends to be more specific based on whatever you're trying to figure out. So I'm going to read through this, convert code to Markdown, generate a zip file, store the zip file, provide a download link. New menu item, agreed, simple interface, select post types, initiate the process, access the download link, show progress status. Yeah, why not? Post content, Markdown, preserve formatting, handle images and links. Fine. Post meta to include. Okay, I'm gonna remember that because I don't care about post meta. File organization, generate meaningful file names, create organized folder structure in the zip file. Okay, so what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start making notes for myself / the AI, and I'm going to say no need to include post meta, only the post content. Remco, so you can tell us if you need the post meta. For file organization, I'm going to actually leave that like that for now. Maybe we should add, let's say it should be possible to add a date prefix to the individual files. For now, use the current date in the format year, month, day, because I use European times. Okay, and then restrict access to admins, clean up all Egforce files off the download. I'm going to say don't clean up after a download, or should we? I don't know. Let's say have a button to clean up old files and list previous zip files on the screen for future downloads. Why not? It might be nice to have that list there. So let's do that. And what I also like to do is I don't know if this works or not, but I do like to say let's adjust some of those requirements. I feel like I am talking to a human being, so I talk to the AI like I would a human being. Compatible with WordPress 5.0, yeah, that's fine. Coding standards, yes. WordPress file system APIs, proper uninstall cleanup, that's fine. Structure, I'll leave it like that. So it says, would you like to proceed with implementing a specific part or with the structure, or would you like to refine any of these requirements first? So then I say, let's adjust some of the requirements first, and update the requirements. So there we go. So now it should take the previous set of requirements and go through an update. Okay, we've got that. Cameron says being polite to the AI will save you from the robot birds. Well, that's kind of why I'm being polite, because when our robot overlords eventually take over, Fluff says the same thing. When they do eventually take over, I'm pretty sure they're going to be scanning through the history banks to see who was polite to the AI and who wasn't. 100%. So okay, so it's updated those things that we've suggested to it. Okay, so it's given us all of that. So now it starts saying the structure is now simpler, so we still need to handle post meta. Cool. Would you like to proceed with implementation? Now, what is interesting, I've noticed that it does have like an admin and it includes and all of that. That's interesting. I mean, that's certainly not wrong. So I'm happy with all of that. What I want to do now, though, is I want to say, don't start any implementation. Create a first, create the plugin directory, and then create a requirements, can't spell today, MD file inside that directory with all these requirements. Okay, so this is something that I learned about and read about, and I want to show you what happens when we do that and why I'm doing that. I also just want to check my phone because I think somebody buzzed me. My wife might be sending me messages. She isn't, so it's all good. The only person I will interrupt my stream for is my wife. Fluff says we had the same idea. Absolutely. Cameron, where are you based in the world now? And Fluff, where are you based in the world? I think Cameron, last time I spoke to you, you were in England. And Fluff, I'm not sure where you are. Fluff, I know from a local tech Slack, but I'd like to know where you are in the world. Interesting to see where you're all from. So let's do this. Okay, so it's going to create the initial directory and it's going to generate the markdown file. Now, okay, so Fluff says West Coast. Okay, so West Coast of South Africa, I assume, Cape Town. Because yeah, the West Coast is all over the world. Now this is what's interesting. Watch this fun and games. So it's created the directory in the root of this WordPress install. Do you see that? It wasn't clever enough to know, oh, Cameron's back in Australia. Okay, so Cameron's in Australia. Sure, it must be quite late for you, bud. And we're in Cape Town. Okay, getting back to the stream. So notice it hasn't created the directory in the correct place. So it hasn't been able to determine that the project I'm working in is a WordPress install. So now I have, and this is where the cons, this is like the downside. You'll also notice that, I don't know if this is a cursor bug, but if you have a look at the requirements file, it doesn't include the plugin structure properly. There's something, I think there's a problem with backticks in cursor. You'll see there's 3 backticks there, and it's probably started with 3 backticks here. So I think this is a bug in cursor that when it generates something in the code formatting backticks, it breaks in the composer. This is something I discovered when I was working with this. So this was a little bit annoying. So I'm actually gonna have to do some copy pasting right now. So I'm gonna grab this out, and I'm gonna have to actually break my rule and write some code here. Now that is Copilot doing its, or at least Cursor doing its thing, but I'm going to paste those. No, that's not what I want. I want these things here. There we go. And then we can do the ticks. Okay, so that's there. So now you'll notice that what it does is it generates everything, and there's 2 ways you can accept this change. You can either accept the change at the top of this generation, there's a little accept button there, or you can go and look at the file, and you can either accept there, it's a horrible green color on top of a green color, so it's not great for accessibility, or there's this accept file at the bottom of the page here. So I usually use this one, or you can option enter, that's also an option. So that's my requirements done. But now I'm actually going to have to say to it, it says, would you like me to proceed? I'm going to say, no, you've created the plugin directory in the wrong place. And now let's see if it figures out what's going on. So now it realizes this should be created in the WP content plugins directory. So you'll notice it doesn't have context of the existing code. So it doesn't know where these files should be. So now I want to see if it's going to make that change. Let me help you, blah. Would you like me to create this directory and move it? The full path would be, so I'm going to say, yes, create the directory and move the requirements and clean up afterwards. Now, if I was brand new to WordPress development, I wouldn't know about this. And so my plugin would be there and I would wonder why it doesn't work. So something to be aware of. Developers are not outdated just yet. Okay, so now I have this option to run these commands. So this is a cool thing about Cursor. It'll actually generate the commands for me, and I can then run them. So if I run that, that'll create it, and you'll see it's running in the terminal. I'll say run that, it'll move the file, and I'll say run that, and it'll clean up after me. So that's kind of cool. It's one of the things I like about Cursor is you can run commands, so you can do things like npm init and all that kind of stuff. Somewhere along the line, and this is interesting, somewhere along the line I've told my instance of Cursor that I would like to manually run any commands. So that's why it's generating it in this format. When I first started, it would just say, do you accept? And then when I accepted, it would just run those commands. But somewhere along the line, I told it, I want to run commands going forward, and now it presents it in a way that I manually do them. So a good thing to be aware of is to give it explicit instructions on how it must generate content for you, how it must generate code, what you want to do versus, you know, what you want it to do. But that's another example of how, if you weren't a developer and you were trying to build a plugin, you would know that you need to run these things and it might run things incorrectly. So pros and cons. Okay. So that's all done. Let's go over to the content plugins. There's the WordPress to Markdown exporter. There are the requirements. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, read the requirements, read through the requirements, and ask any clarifying questions. Now, this is an interesting step that I saw suggested online. But essentially what this does is it runs through the requirements and then checks if anything isn't clear. And a few times I've done this, it's actually pointed out things that I haven't thought of, edge cases that I haven't thought of. So this to me is another cool thing about using an AI tool, is you can have that kind of, you know, when you're busy speccing out a project, you can think about the requirements, you can think about what the pros and cons are, the different solutions, and then say to yourself, well, if I do this, what'll happen? All that kind of thing. So this is where I find these kind of things useful. Because now it's going to read through And it's going to say, I do have some questions. Should there be a maximum number of zip files that can be stored? That's something we didn't think about in the requirements. Should we organize the zip files by date or keep them all in one directory? Didn't think about that. How should we handle embedded content like iframes and shortcodes? We didn't think about that. Should we preserve HTML comments in the Markdown output? Now that's interesting, because I'm wondering if it's thinking about that because of the fact that it's block Markdown. But if you know WordPress Markdown, you know it uses HTML comments. So that's interesting. Should we handle WordPress blocks in any special way? Also interesting. And so it goes through a whole bunch of things that I didn't even think of when I first started thinking about this project. So this is kind of cool, because now I can go, okay, let me refine these requirements. So let's say, and what I tend to do is I just tend to answer these questions one by one. So let's say it should keep a, no, let's do it this way. There's no upper limit to how many zip files that can be stored. So I'm going to leave that up to the site owner to, if they overload their site, that's their problem. Should we organize the zip files by date? I think we should do that. We should organize, and I'm writing in American just because it's an American AI. We should organize the zip files by date. And the other reason I'm doing this is because that's a WordPress a thing. If I wasn't a developer, maybe I wouldn't do that. Maybe I would. I don't know. But that's what I want to do. Embedded content. Iframes and shortcodes. So this is kind of where I would need to check with a client, in this case Remkus, and say, like, what do you want to do with that? For now, I'm going to say ignore embedded content. We can always improve that later. So Leo's got a question. I'll get to this in a second. We can ignore embedded content. Also, hey Leo. We don't need to preserve HTML comments. Notice how I'm saying we, as if it's me and another person. It probably should be the plugin. Handle WordPress blocks. Blocks should just become the relevant Markdown. I'm going to leave that. Or plain text if no equivalent Markdown exists. When the date is prefixed, what should happen if multiple exports are done on the same day? When the date is prefixed, we can override previous versions if multiple exports are done on the same day. Okay. Should we sanitize the post slug beyond WordPress? Use default WordPress slug sanitization. Show progress as a number of posts processed, as the number of posts processed. Store the conversion history. No. Don't store conversion history. Should there be a confirm? Should we clean up button remove or allow selective? Clean up button removes all previous zips for now. No confirmation required. Probably should add that, but I'm going to keep it simple. We can always add it later. How should we handle posts that fail to convert? If a post fails to convert, I'm going to say move on to the next one for now. Actually, an error log is not a bad idea. So let's add an error log. Let's add a log that lists completed and failed posts to be included in the zip. Should be able to select specific posts within a post type. No. Export all posts of a type. Should there be an option to filter posts by date range? No date range filter. Again, we can look at adding that later. Okay. So folks said here, can you, Cursor, do you know what to do? Also ask it to make any suggestions or improvements it might think I'm missing. If you encounter any issues, resolve them. Make suggestions. Yeah. So I have done that before. I usually do that once the code is generated. I'll actually say to it, like, have a look at this file and see if you can make any suggestions. But I don't tend to do that now in the sort of requirements phase. I tend to do this clarifying questions thing, and that tends to cover everything I need. But hopefully we'll find an issue as we do this, and we'll see, what it does with it. Sometimes the Cursor AI creates its own issues. So I've definitely had experiences when I was building. What I was trying to do was I was trying to create a GitHub action to generate builds for different platforms. So in a future live stream, I'm hoping to show you all how that went down. But the code that it generated was completely useless to me, and I kept saying to it, "This isn't working. Can you, and it kept just suggesting stuff that didn't work until eventually I did some Google searching myself, found the answer, shared a link with the Cursor and said, "I think we need to do this," and it was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry," and then it implemented that. So it's definitely touch and go, trial and error. Okay, so now it's going to read through all the answers to my questions. It's going to update the requirements. And it's probably going to freak out again with that ticks thing. It doesn't actually seem to have done that. It actually seems to have worked. So that's cool. So let's accept this file. So add the details about the log, file organization, specifying da. What I do like about Cursor is the fact that when it updates things, it gives you like this diff view, which is really cool. So you can, it's difficult to see on, I'm live streaming on a 1920 by 1080 p screen. I have a much wider screen when I'm actually coding, so it's difficult to see all the content. Leo says, I also found that future things it does could contradict early parts. Absolutely. So at the end, like you said, you'll say, yeah, absolutely. I've had it where I've suggested, so in the debugging app that I shared earlier, I asked it to add, oh, that's right. So somebody I know was testing the macOS version, and they were saying that they can't quit the app. And so I asked through the normal Mac quit method, so, the menu bar quit or command Q or whatever the case may be. I'm just trying to figure myself out here. There we go. Lost my thing. I asked it to code to fix the quit button, and then it removed the quit button that was inside the app. So I had to ask it to put that back. So it definitely contradicts itself. Absolutely. Okay. As I was saying, what I like about this, it gives you this sort of diff view. So you can kind of go through and accept line by line. So let's accept all of this. I should read through all of this. I'm not going to. I'm just going to accept it all as is. Okay. So that's how I like to start. I like to start with a requirements file. And then what I like to do is I like to do the following. So this is, again, a tip that I picked up. So now I say, don't write any code. Generate an atomic set of instructions as you might for a junior developer. This is always the interesting bit. In an instructions.md file. And this is cool because now it's going to take all the requirements and actually generate the instructions for you. And then you can tell it to write the code step by step by step, so you can kind of see every step of the way. So I think this is a really cool tip. It kind of gives you something to work with, and it allows you to make sure that it's going step by step by step. So basic plugin setup, admin interface, post type handling, sorry, I would say that twice. File system setup, conversion logic, export process, file management, security and error handling, testing and cleanup, and then if there are any notes. So this is kind of cool. I like having this process, and then I like to keep the instructions and the requirements in context whenever I'm asking it to do things. You'll notice that as these files have been created, they're sort of added over here to this list. You can add files by context. So what I like to do now is I like to get the instructions in. So there's the instructions MD, and then let's add the requirements as well. So it always has that context whenever it's generating code. All right. So now let's say, now it says, would you like me to clarify these steps? I'm fine. So now I'm going to say, let's start by coding step 1. Now we start writing some code. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over here so we can see what it does. And let's go. So it's busy suggesting a whole bunch of code. So I've got my main WordPress file. So let's just see, and now I can read through all of this and see what this is all about. So it's found some white space. So the reason these little squiggles are coming up is because I've got PHP-CS installed in VS Code. When I installed Cursor, it imported all my VS Code extensions. So that's because there's no name there. So that's fine. I'll go through those in a bit. This is PSR2. I wonder if my things are configured correctly. Let me just check that for a second. Yeah. Ah, that's why. Had my standards set incorrectly. Okay. So let's go back to the file. Nope, why is it not? There we go. All right. So it's doing the apps path. It's creating a markdown to export a class. It's using what's that word? Singleton, which has its pros and cons. And it's creating some code. So the goal of this is not to dive into the code and what it creates. The goal is to see, well, does this code work? Does it throw any bugs? Can it build something that is fairly useful? You'll notice that I'm getting a couple of inline comment issues from PHP-CS. I specifically told it to use WordPress coding standards, so that for me is always interesting. It seems to keep getting that wrong. It doesn't 100% follow WordPress coding standards, but that's fine. So what you can do now is you can either fix these in Composer or you can fix in chat or whatever the case may be. I'm not going to worry too much about it, but I'm going to accept this file. All right. So that's step 1. I have no idea if any of this is going to work. Let's see what this gives us when we run this on a WordPress site. So here is my site. Let's go to the plugins directory. There's the plugin. Let's activate it. Now what I'm going to do, just for fun, is I'm going to open up WP Debug, which is the app that I wrote, and I'm going to point that to this directory because I want to enable debugging. And so I'm going to go here and here and go to my test bed, and this will enable debugging on the site, and if anything gets thrown up in the logs, I'll see it on that window. I'm going to pull this off screen because I don't want it on screen all the time. But I'm going to just keep it there and we can pull it back if anything goes wrong. So let's activate that. Okay, plugin's activated. I'm not seeing any errors in the bug in the log. So let's see if it's created a menu item somewhere. Export to Markdown. There it is. Admin interface coming soon. Okay, so at least the menu item seems to work. It's not throwing any errors. So let's move on. Okay. As I say, I don't know. The whole point of this is I don't know how to code this. So we're going to see if we go to step 2. So I'd say let's move on to step 2. Okay, so again, it's generating a whole bunch of things for us. So there's the admin interface, there's some CSS, there's some views, there's the admin class. Again, I'm not going to dive into the code quality here. The goal is just to see whether this is doable. We can always maybe spend a session reviewing the code quality, or maybe you all can come and review the code quality and tell me what's terrible. So I'm going to accept that file. And then we'll go to the admin and we'll accept that. Admin page is fine. We'll do the class admin page. And it should have registered the class in here somewhere. Yeah, it's done that there. So, ooh, looks like it's moved some things around. So let's accept that change. What I do like about it is it gives you, some information about what it's doing. So it's created the dedicated admin class, added a proper admin page template, some styling, admin functionality. Now, what I do like about this is, would you like me to fix any linting errors? Which is cool, because it's obviously picking up that we're getting linting errors. So let's see if it can do this. So let's say fix any linting errors. Okay, so now it's fixing those errors. I'm going to just accept them all and see if I'm still getting errors. So I don't know how good it is at this. Definitely getting errors here and there. This one's saying expect to take a packet, expect name file. So you see that it's on a public function. That's awesome. It's created a public function inside of a non-class. That's beautiful. So yeah, it's not perfect. Okay. Would you like me to make any additional adjustments? Now here's the thing. Here's the whole point of this live stream is I don't know how to make WordPress plugins. That's the whole purpose here. That's my brain. I don't know what I'm doing. Sure, some of the things I've kind of cheated, but this is kind of the point. Is that code there is going to break, and I know this. So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, it didn't actually break. That's interesting. Maybe this is not even being used. Who knows? I'm pretty sure you can't call a public function outside of a class. Maybe it's being included somewhere. That's interesting. I have to dig into why that's happening. But hey, here we go. So here we've got our post types. We've got post, pages, and media. Should have maybe thought about excluding media. Who knows? We've got the add. That's cool that it's added that as a checkbox. So let's go with posts and let's see. Okay. Now it's saying cannot load. Okay, so maybe it's waiting for some more functionality to come. So let's move on to the next step and see what happens. So let's say, now I can't remember now what step we were on. So say let's move on to the next step. Now this started happening to me when I was coding my first project. I found the generation started slowing down. I don't know if that's got to do with the way cursor works, or if it's like number of requests, and then after a certain number of requests it slows down. But this definitely happened to me. It got to this point where it would just sit hanging and generating. So this is kind of how I got around this in the first place, was I started creating a new cursor window. Now remember, when you do that, you're going to lose the context of what you were building. So it's going to forget all of the files you created, yada, yada, yada. So that's the downside. The upside is it kind of goes back to being speedy and whatever the case is, and then you go from there. Leo says, any chance you can playground it? What do you mean by playground it, Leo? Not sure what you mean there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new rate limiting. Yeah, so Leo's obviously got loads of experience with this. As I say, I've just started playing with it. WordPress Playground. Do you mean... You mean like I'm using Studio at the moment, so that uses Playground underneath? Are you talking about loading it up in a blueprint somewhere? Or do you just mean using Playground for the local environment? Okay, so now this is freaking out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new cursor window. And I'm going to go back to the instructions. And so I'm going to add the requirements and the instructions as the context. And I'm going to say, oh, that's probably why. So we did the admin interface. I think we need to move on to step 3. Okay. Let's move on to step 3. I want to play with what you're doing. Oh, the code. I'd have to set it up in GitHub and all of that, which I'm only going to get to at the end. So I'll share the GitHub repo once we're done here today, and then you're welcome to have a look at it. Okay. So notice what it's doing now is it's saying I'd help you implement the post type handling section. Let's first check what files we have. So now it reads through the files that exist, and it kind of gets, you see, so it's kind of lost all memory of what happened in the past. And this is one of the downsides of using the cursor tools, is that it doesn't have memory. It doesn't understand what's been built before, especially if you open up a new cursor window. So you kind of have to point it. It kind of has to read through the code. And it can start giving you issues. So now it's fixing linting errors. So let's just let that be fixed. Now what's interesting is that I didn't tell it to fix any linting errors. It obviously picked up that we fixed linting errors previously, or it's just picking them up in the code because of, you know, the things that I have installed. So it's cool that it's finding these things and now fixing them. Okay, so that's all done. So I'm going to just accept all of that. But I've just started using cursor, so I don't do anything crazy. I'm just literally experimenting. I'm not using it for any kind of production environment stuff yet. So no, I'm literally just experimenting with what it can do. So, you know, locking files and versus with the linter. So I use PHPCS locally, but that's as far as it goes. Okay. So now it's saying the groundwork is laid, so let's move on to the next step. So we're actually on step 4 already, which I didn't realize. So let's say, okay, fine. So let's move on to step 4. Now it's going to create a class to handle the file system operations. So I think I'm hitting rate limit issues here, because it's taking a long time. But at least we're getting somewhere. So let's let it do its thing. Now it's finding some lints. Oh no, I don't lock at all. I just leave it to do its thing. As I say, I'm literally just using this from an interest point of view, an experimentation point of view. Just kind of showing what it would be like to work with something like this. I'm wanting to kind of make the point that these tools can be useful, but they also have their downsides. So I'm not doing anything specific about locking files or anything like that. Okay, so now it's deleting some files. So while that's doing that, I want to see what Leo's talking about there. I didn't know you could lock files. Where's my browser? There we go. So let's go to their docs. Is this something you can do in cursor, I guess? Ignore files. Codebase indexing. I don't see anything about locking in the docs. It'd be interesting to know what's possible there, because it's not something maybe we can accept file. Really partial accepts. Okay, I haven't come across locking files, so if you want to share how that works, we can check that out maybe in a future stream. Okay. See, it's taking forever to delete this file now. Maybe I need to accept it. Okay, this is done now. So let's have a look. Okay, so apparently it's done step 5, which is the file system setup. So let's see what that does in the plugin itself. I think everything has been accepted as far as I can tell. Yeah, okay, so we should be good to go there. So let's have a look and see what that does. Okay, so we'll do that. So export to Markdown. Okay, it's still saying cannot load WP to MD, so I don't know if that's supposed to work yet or not, but let's move on to the next step. Okay, let's go. Now, what you should do ideally is after every step, you should commit that code just so you have a history of that. It's the one thing I meant to remember to do and then I completely forgot, so I'm just going to move on to step 5. So let's say let's move on to step 5. See, what it does do is it creates checkpoints, so you can obviously restore to that checkpoint. If you've created a new cursor tab, you might have to go back to that one to revert to that point. So it's a good idea to commit your code as changes are made. What I did the first time was I just kind of built the first version of the project, kind of got it working, and then committed changes from there. But, you know, use it at your own discretion. Okay, so let's see what this is doing. I definitely feel like I've hit in some kind of rate limiting situation because it's taking forever. Ooh, matches. That's always fun. Class to MD converter. I definitely feel like that this is going to fail. See, this doesn't look right. As far as I know, this should be a function somewhere. Oh, no, it's render admin page. Maybe it does work. Okay, so that's moved on to that step. There's some remaining linter warnings. So according to that, that's fine. I'm not going to review the code right now. I'm just going to see what it builds. So let's move on to step 6. Where are we now? Step 5, step 6. Let's do it. Let's actually see what it's done. Let's see what's working, what's not working. Post, we'll add that. So export to Markdown. Still can't load it. So don't know if it's going to work. But let's go to step 6. So we've got 1, 2, 3 more steps to go. We've got something. Whether it works or not, I have no idea. But we're sort of, how many steps were there? 9 in total. So we're kind of just over halfway. And kind of what I want to do here is try and replicate as much as I can the process of somebody who doesn't know how to build a WordPress plugin, to kind of let Cursor write the code and then test it manually and see what happens and then give it some feedback and see what it can fix. I'm not looking at the code on purpose. I want to see what it generates. I mean, I don't want to see what it generates, but I want to test it in the admin interface. It's probably, the code is probably horrible. I'd probably have loads of comments about the code if I reviewed it. But that's kind of not the point of this session. Maybe in a future session we can go through the code and see what we would change. I don't know. It certainly is interesting. Let's put it that way. All right. So it's busy fixing lints. Now what's interesting is, I haven't accepted any of these updates yet. I'm letting it do its thing. I'm letting it fix the linting. I'm not even looking at the files. And then I just accept all and I just hope for the best. Let's have a look. What's happening? Main class kind of looks okay. Yeah, there's the cleanup and all of that. All right, so it's done its thing. So let's go with accept all, and then let's move on. So let's say yes. Let's move on to step 7. So I was kind of hoping this wouldn't slow down too much for the live stream. Now, thanks, Liam. What is interesting is that if I was somebody who didn't know how to write code, I certainly wouldn't be stopping and checking all the code. I would just be accepting what it tells me. And I find it interesting that by doing this process, it does tend to start slowing down. I start hitting rate limits. I think there's a thing where you have so many pro requests or something, and then it switches to something called a slow request or whatever the case is. So it's really not a great experience from that point of view, from the point of view of quickly generating something if you know nothing about it. The example where I saw people using this was one where they were generating documentation for existing code, adding features to code, smaller features. So I would say in those instances, it's pretty interesting to kind of use it, and it just focuses on that problem. My experience is that adjusting any prior code, keep working. My experience has been that building a project from scratch without reviewing the code means that you do start hitting these rate limit issues. So it's probably a good idea if you are a developer that you're using these things to kind of look at the code, inspect the code, make sure you're happy with it. Because then you're kind of not using it too much, too crazy, and you shouldn't hit these issues. So because we are on step 7, what I'm going to do after step 7 is finished is I'm going to go through and just kind of clean up some of these plugin header things. I'm going to just look through the code that we have and just kind of comment on what I see there. And then we'll move on. Hopefully then the generation will be a bit quicker, and we won't be sitting here staring at the generating screen for too long. it's like getting caught up with the white space issues. I like the way eventually it just gives up. Okay, so let us accept this, and let's actually just do a quick check through the code we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the plugin URI, because actually no, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to pop on over to my GitHub profile, and I'm going to create a new repo for this, so Leo can play with it. Let's call this, what did it call it? Let's call this WordPress to Markdown Exporter. So there's the description. What am I doing? No, forget that I'm on a Mac and I can't Control C. Nope, it's not what I want. That one. So say WP to, damn it. MD exporter. Okay, so we'll create that, we'll give all of that, create the repo, need to choose an owner, belong to 2 million organizations. How about super duper rotary phone? So let's create the repo, and now let's just commit this code to the repo. So I'm going to just grab these things here. So let's just check. My phone is buzzing, so I'm just going to check it quickly. No, nothing important. Okay, Studio, Markdown testbed, content plugins. that one. Okay, so let's initialize. Add everything. Just say step 1 to 7 completed by cursor. Let's say get, can never remember. Get branch minus M. There we go. Get branch minus M, and I like to go with trunk now. Okay, that's fine. And let's add the origin. And then we'll just push. Okay, so there's all the code if you want to check it out on your side. Feel free to play with it. I'm sure there's lots of issues there. You're welcome to submit PRs for now if you want, or you can wait until I'm done and then submit your PRs. Show us what's wrong with it. I'd love to see what people come up with. Okay. Let's move on, and let me just, okay, so the reason I wanted to do that was I wanted to actually put the URI in there. So I'll just pop that in there. And I'll just put my name in there. I'll stick my URL in there, so that's cool. And then I'll... Okay, so that should hopefully give it enough time to slow down and think about it. So let's say, yes, let's move on to step 8. Okay, so it's creating a new class to handle security. Still pretty slow. That's a bit of a bummer. Now you will remember that in the requirements, we specifically said follow WordPress coding standards, but it's still generating code that doesn't follow WordPress coding standards. So that I have found to be consistent across all my experiments. I haven't experimented with actually setting up a linter for an Electron app or any of the other things. So that's something that's definitely, code quality is not amazing. I just saw that it's checking the server request method. That just sounds like a security issue to me. So that I'm not too sure about. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to see what that code is doing later. That's actually super worrying if it's just accessing server request methods. Hopefully it's not doing anything dodgy. Interesting. Okay. So it's still finding and fixing lints. This seems to be taking up the most time lately. Okay, that's done some work. So now what I'd like to show, and I'm stupid, I forgot I wanted to do this every time. But before I do step 9, I want to show you how you can craft a commit message and push to your repository. So I'm going to say before we move on to step 9, craft a commit for step 8. Now, this is where I do find things like cursor to be useful. So it'll actually... This first is going to fix another whitespace error, which would have been nice if it just fixed it previously. Anyway, but these kind of tasks are where I find these tools to be useful. So the mundane day-to-day things like generating commit messages, pushing, committing and pushing, improving documentation, inline documentation, writing out requirements based on instructions, that whole clarification process. you know, some of those questions there are questions that I could have gone back to the client and said, hey, how do we do this? How do we do that? So that kind of like, as my team lead, my previous team lead, I've recently switched teams, but as my previous team lead said, that second brain stuff, that stuff that is sort of necessary but can sometimes be boring and mundane, the AI tools excel at. But it's a specific task, asking a bunch of questions about something, or generating a bunch of instructions based on requirements, or whatever the case may be, generating commit messages. I haven't tried generating tests. That's something else I want to experiment with in a future live stream. Is we take some code, maybe this code, I don't know, and we generate some tests, and we see what the tests look like. You know, that could be cool. All right, so let's run that. Now, I don't know why I have this problem, but for some reason it does something wrong when it tries to run a commit from Cursor in my terminal. I don't know if it's the way I've got my terminal configured or what the problem is, but this is one of the reasons why I told Cursor to not just automatically run these commands. I'm going to copy this out now. This could be a Cursor bug. I'm not sure. I haven't used it long enough, but I'm going to copy this out and pop this into the terminal that I have open, so that it does whatever it needs to do. Fatal, not, I'm in the wrong place. Markdown, not a Git repository. Okay, let's just exit out of here. And let's go to a new terminal. Oh, because I'm in the, that's why it fails. I just realized, I can't believe it. Because it's trying to run it from the WordPress install, not the plugin install. See that? Now, a non-developer wouldn't know that. A non-developer wouldn't know that that's the problem. So this has probably got more to do with the fact that I tend to prefer to develop inside of a WordPress install like this. It's assuming I'm working inside the plugin directory. So if I didn't know what was going on, I wouldn't be able to give it that feedback and say, hey, hang on, you're running it in the project that's open is a WordPress install. You need to run this in the context of the plugin folder. So that's interesting. So let's say the commit message is failing because you are running it inside the root directory of a WordPress install, but the plugin was created in the plugins directory. Now, you'll remember we told it earlier on to move it to the plugins directory, so it hasn't remembered that. Now, I don't know if that's because I switched to a new Composer tab or Composer window, but that's something that would be interesting to try and add. I know there's a thing called cursor rules. It's like a .cursor rules file. Cheers, Cameron. If you want to watch the rest, catch the YouTube video. I'll be popping it on YouTube later. So it'd be cool if I could actually tell this project where things are. So for the moment, I'm just going to do that and see what it does. Ah, you're absolutely right. Yes, of course I am. So let's run that. Now it's giving me all kinds of fun things. Now, I don't know why this is happening, but I think Cursor's running like PowerShell by default or something. So this is something that I got stuck with last time. And as I say, I'm not sure if it's got to do with my configuration, the way I do things. Maybe I've got my terminal, maybe the terminal that I'm running in Cursor is wrong. I don't know if I can set that. Maybe I can set that. I actually don't know. I don't use a terminal inside of my IDE. I tend to use my own terminal. So I think that might be what the problem is. So let's do it this way. Let's copy this file out, this command out, and I'm going to open up my terminal, and I'm going to run it. Okay, so it's done that. Happy days. It looks like it hasn't included the security file, so let's do that as well. Git commit. What is it? Git add? Git add includes class. There we go. So maybe in a future session, I should open up the code just to the plugin and see what happens. So that's something to think about. And let's status. Let's just commit this. Adding security settings. Let's just push this. So this is definitely something where I ran into issues originally. I still need to dive in why this is happening. I have no idea why. But I'm just going to say I have done this. But what I have used this before is I've used it to actually generate the commit message for me. So I'm going to say I will do this manually. Can you simply output the commit message so I can copy it? Because all I want is just the commit message. So I want to show you. So you see, so this is what I should have used for my commit message. This is useful. This is a good explanation of the commit. So that's cool. You copy it, you do your commit, you paste it in, you're good to go. It's not going to be there now because I just cheated and just popped it in. But that's a good example of what you can do. All right. So the last time I checked, we were on security and error handling, which was number 8. So let's move on to number 9. Okay, let's move to step 9. So this is actually going to create a test class. So this is going to create some tests for us. This is interesting. Now, if you're working in a WordPress space, there's the WordPress testing functionality that kind of requires a whole bunch of other things. So I'm wondering if it's going to actually get us to install those things so that we can run the tests. I didn't even think that it would do that. So let's see what it does. I'm interested to see what it does. Okay, it's finding some white space. So there's our tests. So we'll just let that run. So there is a lot of sitting and waiting when you're using something like Cursor, depending on how far down the line you get. This tied in with my original experience. I worked for about 2 hours, but after the first hour, things started slowing down. And what I would do is every time I wanted to move on to the next step, I would then create a new cursor tab or window or whatever it's called, new composer, a new composer. And I would just, do it that way. So now it's fixing all kinds of things. I don't know what it's doing. I don't know if these things are right or wrong. I have no idea. But it's doing things. Adding a menu item to run the tests. Okay, so it doesn't look like it's using the WP tests framework. That's interesting. So it's kind of doing like a manual test vibe. That's interesting. It's only if debug is enabled. Okay, so because I'm using my debugging plugin, which comes from this debugging app that I wrote, the WP debug will be enabled. So we will be able to run these tests. But again, if you weren't a developer, how would you know how to use that? So now it's saying the test suite is ready. It's done a whole bunch of changes. The test suite is ready. Would you like to proceed with any specific testing or move on to something else? Let's see what that's done. Let's see where we're at. We should have a finished plugin, a finished and working plugin now. So let's go into the site and see what we have. So let's go to plugins and just make sure that all seems fine. So let's go to tools. Let's go to export to markdown. Okay. Do I see a test menu anywhere? I don't see one. Where was it added? I wonder. Who knows? Let's see what happens when I export to markdown. Okay, I'm still getting this error. Okay, so there's definitely something wrong there. So test WordPress admin integration. So let's see what it's actually done. Oh, I haven't accepted it. Silly boy. Keep forgetting to accept things. Let's try that again. Okay, so now do I have a test option? Don't seem to have a test option. No. Okay, let's see what it's actually generated. Now again, if I wasn't a WordPress developer or PHP developer, I wouldn't necessarily know what I needed to look for. But let's see what it's done. Test post, error log, success. test file system, test conversion, test export, file management, log error message, log success. So according to this, there's an admin interface integration. I wonder if where is it? Okay, let's have a look at the code that it generated. It's here. Let's render the test. Maybe I didn't accept the admin page. Class WP to ND admin page. No, I'm pretty sure I accepted all the changes. So let's have a look. I'm gonna move this out of the way. This out of the way. Don't think it's accepted that change. Let's have a look. So add public function, add admin menu. Oh no, it has added that change. There it is. Add submenu page, run test. Oh, it's a submenu page. Submenu page of what? Manage options. Run test. Admin page export to markdown. Yeah, that definitely hasn't worked. So what it's generated, not there. It looks like it's added export to markdown to the tools, which I feel like I can't remember how to do this. I'm gonna have to have a look at the documentation, but I feel like it's definitely done something wrong there because export to markdown should be a top level menu item. So that's interesting. I want to just check something here. My debugging should be enabled. Yeah, debugging is definitely enabled, so that's fine. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do the following. So now we've written a whole bunch of code and it's not quite working the way we want to do. So now let's see if we can go new composer and I'm not going to give it any context. Okay. In fact, the only context I'm going to give it is the requirements and the instructions again. And maybe let's give it the main plugin file. So there we go. Okay. So now we'll say the test menu isn't appearing even though wdebug is enabled. Okay, let's see what it does. So now it's going to check the admin page and you'll see it's searching for these kinds of things. There are two different admin page class files and the main plugin file is loading that one instead of that one. So now we ended up with two admin pages for some reason. The menu is being added using add management page, which adds to the tool menu, while in class it's adding it. That's where I got confused. I was looking at the wrong place. So it went ahead and created two separate admin classes and then used the wrong one. And this is why I'm doing these live streams, folks, because it's not perfect. Okay, but what's cool is now you can use the editor to fix its own code. So it is very much like working with a junior dev. So let's see what it does. Why is it taking so long? Do I need to accept it? Oh, maybe I should have just accepted it. I thought it was just done it. Okay, so let's accept that. See, so now it's seeing its issues in its own code. Stupid thing. Dear. Okay. Let's see if it fixes that problem. So let's go into Brave. Let's refresh. Okay, so now we have an export to Markdown. Happy days. Yay. And we have run tests. Excellent. Let's see if the tests actually work. There has been a critical error on the website. Yes, I love it. You silly, silly AI tool. Require once. Failed to open stream. A file is not found. Uncaught error. Failed opening var www load. What? What are you doing? Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. So some test thing failed miserably. So now we can give it the debug log. Now here's where if you weren't a developer, you wouldn't know to do this. So this is where your average person is going to get stuck. Let's just be honest. So, you know, unless you know what you're doing, you can't just build software with these tools. So the next time somebody tells you, we're going I mean, this is WordPress code. So like WordPress has been around for 21 years and it can't figure out its own issues. So now we can say run attempting to run the tests, output the errors in the debug log, please fix. I'll still keep saying please. I see the issue in the debug log. I love the way it answers. The test file is trying to load WordPress core files using an incorrect path. Why is the test file running core files when it's running in WordPress? Anyway. So funny. The file is not needed because WordPress is already loaded. We're in the admin area. Well done, AI chatbot. And I certainly, when I built my first Electron app, I had moments like this where it was just blatantly obvious that there was a bug. I didn't know what the code was doing, but when I tried to run it, it was just blatantly obvious there was a bug. And I would give it whatever errors I saw. So if it was console errors, if it was errors in the app, if it was just nothing, I would give it those errors, and it would eventually, after a bit of trial and error, like anybody else who doesn't know what they're doing, it would get to a solution. I would say 8 out of 10 times. So 80% of the time, after a couple of run-throughs, it would get there. But it certainly isn't perfect. If I was to sit down and write this from scratch myself, it would work the first time. I wouldn't have included WP load. I wouldn't have had 2 separate class files, all of that kind of stuff. I'm going to accept all of these. So there you have it. So let us refresh this. Yay, tests. Ooh, we're getting some errors. That's cool. So at least the tests are running. So let's start copying these errors. So the post type handling passed, the export process passed, file management passed, cleanup test passed. That's very cool. Some of them passed. Let's start giving it some errors. So when running the test, the following error occurred. Yeah. So now it's going to probably fix it so it doesn't give it a direct path to the content directory. File handler trying to create directories that doesn't have the proper permissions, or the base upload directory doesn't exist. Making sure the base upload directory exists, adding the proper error handling. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So one thing I started, and it's funny, I didn't do this when I first started the live stream, but I did do this when I was coding, is I started accepting them as we went. So I would sit and I would watch and I would accept as we go. Again, not looking at the code, but just accepting as we go. It seems to speed up the process. So let's run it again and see what happens. Pass, pass, pass. Critical error. Love it. I wonder if we gave it the file system test passed and then there was a critical error. I wonder if it would be able to read from the debug log. So let's say after the file system test pass, I've already given it the debug log, so I'm kind of cheating. But let's say after the file system test passed, the following error occurred. Let's see if it has enough brain or sense or whatever to determine that an error occurred after that test and to go and look at that test to fix it. No, that's not the error that I wanted. Keep forgetting I'm on a Mac. I live stream on my Mac and I don't use a Mac every day. I use a Linux box, and that is Control-C, Control-V. I see the issue in the debug log. Now, I wonder if I would have seen it if I hadn't given it to it. Okay, something about PHP closures with preg replace. All right. I don't know what you're doing, AI chatbot. I'm just hoping you can figure out what you're doing. Okay, it seems to be happy with itself. Okay, let's see if that worked. Okay, we're not getting critical errors anymore, but we are getting a conversion test failed. So let's run that one. And you can also just pop in that message, but I do tend to like seeing this error. I'm hoping we can get this thing more or less working by 4 p.m. my time. So we've got half an hour left. So we'll let it fix those. Okay, let's see if the tests pass. No, we're still getting a conversion test failed. So now I just start jamming in the errors. I see the issue. Well, why didn't you see the issue the last time? Deary me. I made a mistake in the fix. No, really. Well, at least it's picking up its own issues now, which is kind of a good thing, I guess. Try running the test again. Okay, let's see. Still getting the error. Okay. Now I literally am just going to keep passing it this information and seeing what it does with it. I see the... Oh dear. This is too funny. Let's see if this version works. Okay, let's see. Okay. All tests are passing. We're good to go, right? If you've been writing code with tests for any amount of time, you know that's not necessarily true. I haven't looked at the tests, so I don't know what they're doing. But according to all the tests we have, they're all passed. So let's try and do the export to markdown. Let's see what we have. So let's get all our posts. Let's add the prefix. Let's export. That didn't do anything. Okay, let's see if it actually created any files. So let's go into uploads. It's created. No, it hasn't created any files. No, it hasn't done anything. Okay, so is there anything in the logs? Okay, so those are all the tests. So let's clear the log. So let's go and run it again. I wonder if there's any export. Okay, that didn't do anything. No logs. So something's not working. Okay, so now we can say we can. Okay. After attempting to export posts, nothing seems to happen. The issue is likely the exporter class, which is currently just returning dummy data. the handle export method in the ambient page class isn't actually doing anything. I'm sorry. This is too funny. So even with a set of instructions, a set of requirements, it still didn't do anything in the handle export. That's beautiful. Oh my word. You have 24 minutes, chatbot, or AI bot, whatever you want to call yourself. You have 24 minutes. Okay. Apparently, it's working now. Let's see. All right, so we do posts. We're going to add the day, month, year. We're going to export to Markdown. I doubt it very much. Nope, nothing seems to be happening. Nope, 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 nope. This is ridiculous. We have a bunch of tests that pass, but the functionality doesn't work. Oh, this is too beautiful. Okay. Still nothing. Passive aggressive ... Fluff says doing what you expect from a junior dev. Exactly. Exactly. It's essentially what you're getting with Cursor AI tools. You're getting a junior dev. So give them simple tasks. You know, a simple bug fix maybe, that you know where the problem is, you know what the issue is. But other than that, can you build software? Maybe. I mean, I did build the debug app, but I was building it as somebody who knew what I was doing. I knew how it should function. I tested the functionality at every step. I didn't build the whole app. I tested the functionality at every step. I gave it feedback as the functionality stopped working. So when we first saw that WP to MD thing, we should have mentioned maybe then already. So it does require you to be a little bit more involved in the process, just like you would a junior dev. And, you know, testing it every step of the way. So, yeah, it's doing a bunch of stuff now. I have no idea what it's doing. I'm not even looking. Now, what's interesting is it's actually reading the files and checking whether the functionality exists. Still picking up issues. So let's see. Let's see if we get there eventually. Now, what would be interesting is if we gave these requirements to somebody and they timed themselves, who knew what they were doing. How long would they take? I don't know. They'd probably take longer, would be my guess. But it would probably work the first time. The code quality would probably be better. And it would do, you know, exactly what it needed to do. So whenever you see somebody, you know, I built this, I built that, yes, it is possible, but it's not always perfect. It does come with issues. See, this is still registering the download handler. Remember when it told us this was all done? This is all working perfectly. This is so much fun to watch. Okay, I've made several changes. Try exporting some posts now. The process should work properly. So do we run the tests or do we do the export? Let's run the tests. Tests are still passing. Let's do the exports. Exports seem to be working. I didn't see a progress indicator anywhere, which we asked for. Export seems to be working. Failed to export 0 posts. Successfully exported 10 posts. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Let's download the export. I'm going to stick it on my desktop. And we probably don't even have time to dive into what it's actually exporting. But let's have a look. Okay, we've got some MD files. Not bad. I'm going to open these up in PHP Storm. Just because I want to use a different editor. So let's open that folder. And let's go into here. Yeah, we can trust this project. And let's see what we have. We have an empty markdown. Oh no, there we go. We do have some markdown. I thought it was empty. So we have some markdown. It seems to be doing something. I'd obviously have to sit and compare. Ooh, was it possible? Was it an error? I don't know. I'd obviously have to sit and compare this. Something's broken here. Something's not happy there. That seems to be fine, but I need to check what was happening there. So it does seem to have done something. It's at least creating some content. Obviously now I would need to compare the results to the code or the functionality, whatever the case may be. I still need to tell it there's some things that it doesn't have. It doesn't have the process indicator. It does have the previous exports, which is cool, so that's nice. It does seem to have got the whole failure everything. I wonder where the log is. I wonder where it's put the log. We're supposed to put it inside of the zip. Has it done that? No. There's no log inside the zip, so it hasn't done that. So even though we gave it instructions and we gave it steps, it still wasn't following them 100%. So do with that with what you will, folks. I kind of went into this expecting this. I didn't expect it to be a much better experience than this. I'm going to commit this so long. So let's get commit. I'm going to just check. I can't spell. Tests. That's interesting. It's created the test directory inside the plugin. Anyway, obviously it doesn't know about unit tests. Let's commit all of this. So let's say fixing bugs, for want of a better word. So there you have it, folks. We certainly aren't anywhere near close to being finished. The next step that I would probably do from this is I would tell it to read through the requirements and the instructions and make sure everything is there. I don't know if I'm going to live stream that. I think what I probably will do is I will do that as a separate thing when I have some time, and commit those changes to the GitHub. So if you want to check out what those changes look like, have a look on Monday, Tuesday. I'll probably commit them then. But it definitely isn't perfect. I mean, this is, I wouldn't say a simple piece of functionality, but it's also not super, super complex. It's definitely doable. The only real complexity was, WordPress block data. I haven't even got into classic editor data. And yeah, it's gotten something working. It's definitely not perfect. I haven't even looked at the code, but it's there, and it does something. And what I do appreciate is it's handled the download for me. Downloading files like this with the headers and all that is something I always used to struggle with back in the day, and I appreciate the fact that it's done that for me. So that was cool. I also appreciate the fact that if you have a look at the download link, I don't know if you can see it there, but it includes a nonce. So there's some security checking in place, which is nice because we told it to have some security checking. But it would be interesting to see if there are any other issues with security around this plugin. So if you have any WordPress experience and you have some free time on your hands, please feel free to review the code and either open issues about problems that you find. Feel free to open pull requests. Pull requests will be interesting because I kind of want to complete the rest of the functionality using the Cursor AI tool. So a pull request just means somebody who knows what they're doing is going to submit a fix, and so the cursor thing is not doing it. So I would rather you submit issues if you can, and then I can use those issues to create further updates to the code. Or just play around with it yourself. See if you can use cursor tools or AI tools to fix things and what it generates. But essentially, yes, it is a very junior dev that doesn't have a lot of context, just has knowledge of how these things work and how to find information on the web and implement fixes, but doesn't really understand the scope of the larger project, even though we've been running it inside the Cursor Composer window. Can eventually get you to a working project, but it ain't going to be perfect. So I'm gonna call this a wrap for now. Fixing what's missing from this plugin is probably going to take longer than the next 15 minutes. I do have some other ideas of things that I want to build in future live streams. There are some projects I want to build. There are some things I want to fix in other things that I want to use Cursor for. So if you're interested in seeing what this is like, what this process looks like, please feel free to join me every Friday. I'll be picking up something. I don't have any plans. So next week might just be something else, or it might be fixing bugs here. I'll see how I feel when I get there. But my goal here is to kind of learn as much as I can about how these tools work, how I can apply them to my work, how we can learn from them, what they're good for, what they're not good for. So join me every Friday, same time, same place, unless something tragic happens. And thank you all for joining me today. Thank you, Leo, and everybody else for sharing links and sharing information. And if you missed any of this, you can catch it on the YouTube sometime next week. All right, I'm going to head out. Have a great weekend. Bye.